Welcome to Worthy the Podcast, where we have conversations about what it means to feel worthy and what happens when we don't. I'm your host, Jessica Raimondi. Welcome back to Worthy, guys. Today I'm sitting down with Cristina Rodriguez, and she is the co-founder and president of Mind&Melody, a nonprofit that uses music as a tool for joy, dignity, and intergenerational connection among older adults with neurological conditions like Alzheimer's. This innovative work has earned Cristina and Mind&Melody national recognition, including the L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth. So welcome, Cristina, to Worthy.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm so excited to be here. This is like one of my favorite topics.
Love it. We heard about this Woman of Worth, recognition and award, and said that we kind of caught our attention that way. And I want to just start there. So who nominated you for this and why? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I was nominated in 2025 for the L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth award by my program director, Ariana. And it's so funny because she nominated it for the work I've been doing at Mind&Melody, like you just said about using music as a tool for connection with people that are experiencing neurological impairments. And when I found out that I was like in the running, I was like, Oriana, like, what did you write in there? She's like, I even saved the application. So I have no idea what you wrote, but
I love
it's an incredible honor. There were over 4,000 people that were nominated or self-applied, and it was a very lengthy process. And I just got to meet some incredible women throughout that journey.
I can imagine. This program, by the way, is just such a beautiful mission. Really, Kemper and I were talking about it off the other day, and it was just like almost it made us very emotional because, and we'll get into it, of course, but this particular, part of society is just like, these people that are struggling with this, with neurological, especially our Alzheimer's and are the elderly, and it's just so wonderful that you're bringing this to them. So I just wanted to commend you on that first. But yeah, how did you think of this beautiful program and bring it to life?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey, and I started playing the cello when I was about 10 years old. I had just moved from Venezuela when I was 7.
Wow.
So I remember just being in my music class and the teacher saying, like, who wants to join the orchestra? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go check what that's about. And he said, okay, well, pick one of the corners in the room. You have a violin, cello, blah, blah, blah. At that time, I was tall for my age. I'm still the same height. And he said, oh, you're going to play the cello. And I was like, what is that? I have no idea what that looks like. But that instrument changed my life. I loved, I would come home from school and just play for hours and hours and hours. And I just love the feeling that music would give me a sense of peace and that like time stopped. And I was just always so interested in that. And like fast forward, I started reading in high school like books around the impact of music on the brain. So like This Is Your Brain on Music or Musicophilia. And I started reading stories where there were people that would have post-traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, who's had traumatic brain injuries. And literally it was a magical effect that started happening where when they were either playing instruments or listening to music or dancing, they were able to gain a lot of their abilities back. And I thought wow, that is fascinating. And at the same time, I started volunteering at what now is Nicholas Hospital. And I would walk around the just pretty much the hallways. I was like working for a nurse there and like running errands for her.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, like a lot of the kids here are around my age, and how I would love to just bring this feeling that music brings to me, this sense of joy and peace, and into this environment. And so I had this idea, like, what if there was a room full of instruments where the community could come in and make it very interactive and not have to like deal with all the pains of how much practice and effort it takes to like actually learn how to play an instrument. And so I wrote this email in my inbox that I meant to send to the volunteer coordinator. And it kind of
Okay.
sat
And
in
this is
my
at the hospital?
at
Out
the
to the
hospital.
hospital. You're okay.
Yeah. This sat in my inbox for 2 years. So um
Wow.
when
Okay.
yeah.
So you wrote
Um
it, never sent it.
I never sent it. Yeah, I was
Wow.
scared that um I was scared to share the idea. Like at the time it was something that people were very much like, "Oh, that's like what's that going to do?" or like, "How are we going to take this seriously in the medical field?" So I was scared. I was 14 years old. And
That's so
so
young. I can't even believe you were reading books about like how this beautiful music can affect the world and make it a better place. It's so brilliant, and amazing.
yeah, I mean, and so it kind of sat there. And then when my came my junior year of college, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. I don't know how I felt ready, but I felt ready. And I'm gonna send the email. And I sent it, and then this message popped on my screen and said, like, this person no longer works here. And I was like, oh,
Like you got
okay.
the courage.
Yeah. And that was a big learning moment for me. But then I kept going, and I went to college, and this idea just like wouldn't leave me. And I tried to do it many other times, like in high school too. I was interning at the psych ward at Jackson, not at the psych ward, sorry, at the ER in at the Jackson near where I went to high school at Coral Reef. And I remember pitching the idea there, and they were like, "Oh, that's going to be too much of a liability. Like, we can't have all these like young people coming in there." And it was just shut down. I got so many no's that I cannot even count on my fingers. Um,
Yeah.
so
So what
that
did that
that
do for so take me back to like being let's go back for one thing. So the 14-year-old, right? Like that like has this big idea, but is scared. Like why what was it that you feel like you were feeling? Why do you feel like were you scared? Was it like was it too big of a risk? Was it I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're young, really, really young, I mean, at any point in life, regardless of your age, like,
Sure.
this happens very much so. Like, you start uh building your sense of worth when you are very young, and like, depending on whether
Right.
people tell you you can or can't do something, even at school, if you start getting F's in all your like science classes, you might be like, maybe this is not for me. And that might not be true.
I
It may just be the environment that you're in. There's so many different factors, but like we can't analyze all of that when we're children. And so I kind of had a similar
hmm
experience where I was just being told no, 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 no by all these like authority figures, right? Physicians or just
Wow.
scientists or people are really like, yeah, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, what is that really going to do? Because we're so used to a society, especially in healthcare, where it's like the medication and like something that you can ship or a software or something, right? Not like something like
Mhm.
they're like that's too easy. That can't be the answer.
Right. It
Um,
cannot possibly be so
that
easy.
can't
Right.
possibly be the answer. Yet we have like
Yeah.
some of the best that's another rabbit hole, but like the treatments out there
Yeah.
are like one of the most effective things to do is to stay active, to be social, your diet, like all the things we hear are just as effective as
Absolutely.
the medications that are out there, if not even more. So anyway, um yeah, I think it was that. I think it was that it was fear that I was like still building my self-worth as a young person, and just
Sure.
being constantly no, you're like, well, maybe this is not something I should be doing, right? And so that was the reason.
Mm.
I don't remember the moment of when I was like, I'm ready, but I think part of it is like when you have a big idea and it just doesn't leave you and you can't sleep and you can't stop talking about it. You're like, well, the only way I'm gonna gain my sanity back is if I actually do something.
True.
So
It's almost like torture. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
it is
this
torture.
creative process.
So you're
Trust me, I get it. Like this,
yeah,
I totally, I think it's really important too. I mean, I remember having those big dreams at 14 and 15 and 16 and all that and feeling like oh, I couldn't possibly, who am I to um put that out there or say that or have this idea or literally like showcase my talent or I'll be shut down. I'll feel stupid or feel silly. And I think it's just such a malleable time in that middle school, high school stage where it's like we want to just fit in, we want to just be like accepted and not, but it sounds like you kind of decided to go for it. So you're saying you even got to college and you kind of went for like sent this email, but you were coming up against some rejection up until then. And I think rejection is, whew, that can be a lot for us, growing up and that does a number on our self-worth for sure. How did you withstand that?
Yeah, I mean, rejection, it's like this thing where we hate it, but we have to love it, because I
Yeah.
do feel like without a lot of those moments, I definitely wouldn't be where I am. I mean, also part of my personality is that I can be a little persistent and stubborn, so that
Uh,
helps.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
and one of the things I remember, yeah, I was in college, I was studying biochemistry, and this idea wouldn't go away, and we had to write a thesis to graduate from school, I was like, "Well, what if I designed a music program that goes beyond just listening to music, but creating music with people that are living with dementia and Alzheimer's?" Because a lot of the studies and things that I was reading out there were just very passive, and I think this comes back to that, like, and we might talk about this a little bit later, but, like, that idea of worth and, like, what people think you can or can't do. I think that was a lot what was being projected on people living with dementia and Alzheimer's, where they're like, well, they don't have maybe they can't communicate. So all we're gonna do is just play a track and we're gonna leave it there. And I was like, well, I think there's more that we can do. And like, what if we actually tried to step into their world versus having them trying to fit into what we think the world is like? And so that was the
Mhm.
entire like philosophy behind it. So, I remember, like, sending a Facebook message to my co-founder at the time, Lauren, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about doing this thesis?" She's like, "Oh, I love it. I wanna do it." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we went to the professor, and she's like, "This is gonna take way too long. Like, you're not gonna be able to do this in, like, the year or whatever." And we're like, "Okay, that's fine. We'll do our separate thesis and we're just still gonna do this, but as like a quality improvement program." So we would drive like
Wow.
a week from our Jupiter campus at FAU to Boca.
Okay.
To
I
like,
used to live in Jupiter. Yeah,
oh
that's so
really?
funny. I lived right near the college. Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
I love
Lived
it
in Jupiter.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're very familiar with the area.
Oh
And
yeah.
we would go and drive and at first
Hmm.
it was like we were just putting flyers everywhere and we had our first like volunteer come and she came with her cello and we're just like, well, just play and we'll talk.
Just
And
fun.
that was
Yeah. Just
yeah,
start. Yeah.
that was the beginning of it until we started to like, test different ideas on like what works, what doesn't work. And that's when I met this gentleman named David and he would we would sit around this circle at the memory care center and we would bring like maracas and pianos and all different instruments and activities and he was just kind of like chilling. Like I don't really know, like he was just not really responding. And I thought, well, like we're never going to be able to reach him. And then I found out he was a professional violinist. So I had a viola.
Oh wow.
I brought it. I like gave it to him, put it in his hands, and he just began to play like flawlessly. I didn't have to tell him.
No. I'm
Yeah.
goosebumps.
And mine was like, wow. And I'm like, David, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm doing well. First time that I ever heard him speak. It probably had been like six
Deep.
months that we had been there.
Right.
And to me, that was a like, whoa, aha moment where I'm like,
It's like confirmation too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, this works. And this is what I've been reading in books. So this is like, everything. And so with like the internal desire of like wanting to see this thing come to life for so many years, plus like
Yeah.
actually experiencing and seeing the impact, you're like, well, I don't care what the haters say.
No. I
You know?
well, you know what? Yeah, it's like really believe. I mean, I call those moments like it's just that intuitive you're being pulled towards this idea. I mean, like you said perfectly, it's like gnaws at you, for like years. And I think so many people can kind of relate to the how often we kind of stuff that down, right? And we just, I'll be quiet, because what is it behind that we're so afraid of it coming out, or um for me, like I said, I remember that being my, all of this kind of creative part of me being stuffed down so much because it would make me stand out, or maybe it would be successful and it would take me away from the life that I know, or something like that. And can you relate to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's taken years to be I mean, I'm 32 now. I'll be 33 in June.
Okay.
But it's been a long journey from and there's still always more work to do, right?
Right. But from
Um,
14 having that dream, it's like, and you're here now.
yeah, I mean, I think again, and I think all those rejections and everything has really like molded me to not really care about what other people think because it will continue in life, right? It still continues, I'm sure. Like people are like, no, or like, I don't like it this way or whatever. And you really have to listen to what's inside and your intuition. For me, that's my biggest like compass of like, okay,
Mm,
does this feel right or does it feel wrong? And it's not scientific. It's kind of hard to put into words, but that really is
hmm
what like gives me self-assurance that I'm like doing what I want to do. And also like I'm not scared of failing because it's like, well, why did I
mm.
fail? And if I can identify why and how, and I can then just try something different, or maybe it didn't work, like there's just always a way to pivot. So,
And we don't know. I mean, failing is just an indication of trying, right? I mean, we can't like to fail at something means at least we tried at it. And I
yeah,
think that, I think that we're just so scared of taking that first step. It's like it's really just like you think about it, it reminds just like this imaginatory like, response, like fear, like rejection's gonna kill us in some way. Like, it's so overwhelming, but it's really just stuff in my opinion. I feel like it's really just fabricated by the mind. We're not. But that just love that you talk about that feeling and having that knowing. And I really hope for people listening that they can, and I know they can relate. I know they have that saying, and to just keep trying, because that reward of you seeing him play that music and the light bulb going on in the whole room, like confirmation that that was supposed to be happening. And you're
absolutely. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I also wish that for the listeners too, because it's like it's
Yeah.
hard. It's like I'm saying, it's taken years to like hear that inner voice and like follow
Yeah.
it. And I'm
Yeah.
not always 100%. I don't always 100% follow it, but then when I don't, I'm like, oh, I knew it was telling me something and I
That's
didn't
right.
do it. um, but also like the rejection and that that fear can really come from people who are like closest to you, people who you really, really love and trust and like
Mm,
want their validation. And for me, and my dad's gonna hate that I tell the story if he listens to this podcast, but I have to share it because I feel like a lot of people can relate to it too. So
mm,
when I was graduating college, so I was pre-med, I was studying biochemistry, and they never like
yeah.
told me to do that. I was always just very interested both in the sciences and in the arts. And I after I had that moment with David playing the viola, I was like, "Oh, like I actually don't want to go to medical school and I want to do this." And this is not like a franchise or a business model that's been done before. So I was just like I had no idea what I was doing or how I was going to do it, but I
Yeah.
knew like I want to do this. And I remember sitting there like studying for the MCAT, like, probably about to take it, and I'm like, I am not gonna go to medical school." And I was like, "I cannot believe this. I've spent my entire life working towards this," right? Like, in high school, going to
How far in were you, like, at this
I
point?
was
So,
already a senior. I was graduating with a degree in biochemistry.
oh my God.
Yes. So I'm like, "Well, that's a backup plan. I can go be a scientist or something, whatever."
Absolutely. It's a pretty solid backup plan.
But imagine, you're like 20 and you're going to your parents and they just pay for your school. And you're like, by the way, I'm not going to do that. They were like, what? Do you need to
Mm,
go see someone so you can like
yeah.
having a crisis?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start this nonprofit. And they're like, okay, well, if you're gonna live here, you're gonna have to pay rent, you're gonna have to get your own car, you're gonna do all these things. So they weren't making it easy for me. And I was like, fine, challenge accepted. Um, and I took a job as an office manager. And I remember like signing up for my first car lease, and I was just mortified because I was like, oh my God, it's like $300. I was like, what do I
Yeah.
do
It's
if
a
I
lot. It's a lot of money.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're making no money. You're like, what? How am I going to pay for that? And then, of course, my parents gave me subsidized rent, but they were still charging me rent. And I just remember going to my dad's room and saying, like, hey, dad, like, you're an entrepreneur. You've built like a business from scratch. Like, can you help me think of a business model to this? Because like traditional fundraising is just not working for me. And he's like, Christina, like, you've already tried this too many times. So why don't you just give up? And I was like, I just remember like leaving the room just like crying. And I was like, I am more fueled to prove you wrong. And now he's like the, biggest believer of the work and super
Oh
supportive.
my gosh. Wow. Wait, let's go back to that for a second. So what did that tell like what was going on in your mind? Like what was your inner dialogue like at the time when he said that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just completely like broken inside, right? Because it's like your parents are probably the first people who believe in you, hopefully.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so when you're like they're just like, just give up. You're like, what? Like maybe I should, because they're your parent. And it's so
Yeah.
hard to be like, I'm not gonna do what my parent says. At least for me, it was.
Did you feel like he had like when he said that, like why do you think he said that? Why do you
Yeah,
think he
I'm
chose
I'm
that?
I'm a mom now, and I'm like, I have a 21-month-old and I'm gonna have a second one. And I
That's
could
right. Those of
see
you who can't see or don't know, she's 32 weeks pregnant. How
yes.
are you? Yeah.
32.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't see my big
Forgot
belly.
to mention that right off the bat.
But I can totally see where he was coming from, where he's like, as you get older, and I see it too, like you become a bit more pragmatic in things, which is a
Sure.
blessing and a curse. And he probably thought like, you just went to school, you'll have a really secure like career, you'll be a physician. It's also like a very honorable, especially when you're like going back to older generations where I think things are changing now, but and they have been changing for a while, but it was very much like people were like, you become this or you become that. And I think for him it was probably something where it was like very honorable for his daughter to be a doctor. So he's not going to question that career path. Um
So I think it was also like him feeling like you were gonna have security and
yeah,
safety, and maybe
I
that.
I think it's all of it, right? Obviously like medical school is it's a path you follow, and most likely if you finish it you'll be successful, whatever, however we're defining success, right? And so I mean, even myself looking back, like it's kind of bizarre that I would trust even me. I mean, I know me, right? And I know my full potential. I mean, was discovering that as well, but perhaps my mom always knew. She never really gave me too much trouble on it. But my dad probably was like, well, I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
fair to be skeptical, right? Like I've never done it before. I've never been an entrepreneur. Like, how am I gonna make money? Like, there's just so many questions. Like, you're like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work. So I get that, but there is something much stronger, which only like the individual person knows, which is like
Mhm.
how how much are you willing to like grind it out to figure it out? Because if you're willing to do that, you will get there. It's not gonna be easy, but like you might be sleeping on the floor. You might have $300
Mhm.
left in the bank account. And it's like, but if you're
Mhm.
willing to continue to persevere and like find the angle, like you will get there. That's my belief.
Like you're saying, you might have to like you might start with this idea might look some way in your head, but then you might run up against some roadblocks that make you pivot and kind of change a little bit here, a little bit there to have it stick somewhere, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's only gonna fail until you give up. So until you're like, I'm done, right?
I love that. That's very well said. Very well said. So this is incredible. So I want to shine a light really on, the people that Mind and Melody are helping, and you've really directed your life to helping those with brain disorders such as dementia, Alzheimer's, which are usually impacting the older age range. Um, I feel like is it fair to say that some of, our elders, like this, especially with neurological brain damage or disorders, have been somewhat like forgotten. I mean, I feel like we as a society could do so much better with the elderly in general. And I feel like I don't know, especially with this, them go kind of reverting back into really needing so much care and assistance. I don't know. Tell me more about them. I'm just really thrilled that there are people like you out there helping.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something odd about our like our relationship with ourselves and aging, where it's like as we get older, somehow um instead of being something that's like celebrated or people that are excited about, it's like this hyper focus on staying young and youth and all these incredible, I mean, like,
Yeah.
supposedly, like, it's the best time of your life, but actually, like, even me just even being at 33, like, I much rather be 33 than being 20. And I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like
Totally. I agree.
as I continue to get older, I'm
Mhm.
sure that it will just continue getting better in different ways for different reasons, right? And there's definitely pros and cons to both, but I think our society definitely is very hyper focused on youth, and sometimes that can be very, and productivity too, youth and productivity by
Mhm.
meaning like how do you contribute to society, meaning like how, what do you work, like what work are you contributing, how are you earning taxes
Yeah.
and all of it, right? And so when somebody gets to a point in their life where they may have some sort of disability, um or they're diagnosed with like dementia, Alzheimer's, and some condition where now that's being stripped away from them, then how do you what you're like, what is my worth? How does society like
100%.
value me? How do I value myself? That's like a really hard question because you have tied your
Oh,
self-identity, right? Your jobs, your memories, your travel, everything
yeah.
to that. And I think it's still like it's a hard concept to like wrap our heads around because it takes a lot of work to detach ourselves from all of those things. But when you have a condition like that where it is being slowly stripped away, you have to redefine it. And the people around you also need to help see you in a different way, which is really,
Yes.
really, really difficult. And so I think part of what we do with Mind and Melody using music as a tool is like we're able to be that bridge between who the person was and who they're becoming, which can
Mm.
be really difficult for a family member, which I totally get because I'm like, I think about, you know, maybe certain unresolved issues that I may have with family members, right? And then you're like, oh, now they don't even remember that. Or you're saying to them, "You remember that time when we went to the Bahamas and like those little pigs were in the beach and they're just looking at you with a blank stare, like I have no idea what we're talking
Yeah.
about, right?" It's like, well, how do you connect? How do you how do
Yeah.
you how do you like remember that person? And I do feel like there's something that goes beyond just like our memories and like again all those identities to actual the human being. And with music, like, is just this incredible thing where it's like it taps into parts of our brains where it'll bring out memories that you thought you had forgotten forever, right? Or lyrics, or makes you smile, or makes you cry, and brings out these emotions that sometimes are locked up when people are experiencing these types of impairments. And so when you see a family member, when you're there and you can see a family member witness that, and kind of see glimpses of their loved ones again. Maybe not in the same way, but just even just experiencing joy. It's something that
Mhm.
nothing in this world can buy. Um, and I do think um that that it's like that is worth it, that gives meaning to their lives. And I'll just tell you like a
Absolutely.
quick little story of
Right.
that I saw. So I was like speaking on a radio show a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and a caregiver at a just like at someone's house was like, "Oh, I heard about this program Mind and Melody, like we should try it for Alexandra." Alexandra was like the former president of the Royal Caribbean. Way
Yeah.
back then. Yeah, like, and she was now in the state where she was in a wheelchair. She was not talking. She hadn't talked for years. Um, just very much like seemed very shut down. But her family still wanted to try the music. And we started to go there once a week, then twice a week, then three times a week. And after a couple of months, we were doing like a name game with you in all of our sessions, and she said her name for the first time. She said Alexandra. And she was starting to say like random
Man.
words. So her family, like,
Oh my
yeah, installed a camera in her house because they're from England, just so they could see her in the sessions when they were
God.
over there.
Oh my God.
And I remember her sister-in-law telling me, like, we used to think of Alexandra as just a person there with Alzheimer's, like nothing really happening in her
Yeah.
brain. Like, these
Yeah.
music sessions have like changed her perspective, and have they've been like the most impactful thing in her life. And I think that it can really change the perception of someone's worth if we try to think about how to meet them differently.
Oh, I think that is so beautiful and so true. You said so much just about the kind of, warped vision that we have of what worth is, right? Like and it's what I do. It's my achievements. It's productivity, right? And that was a big thing for me. I know I remember struggling with not really having an idea of what I wanted to do and feeling less than because I didn't have a clear path. I'm a creative, so I'm like, there's a million things I want to do. Pisces, I'm like, I have a million things I want to do, and they're all from the heart, and I don't know where to start. But anyway, I think, and now over the years, I've seen that, especially we see that in our societies and world, really, just that our worth is tied to things, tied to these things instead of being, in my opinion, inherent, because we exist, and then, I think this typical demographic of I think just the elderly in general, forget if there's anything going on with them. My mom is aging right now and she speaks a lot about feeling invisible out there in the world when she goes out, and she was used to being a very like attractive woman and she's still amazing. She looks incredible. She's almost 80. But I remember her talking to me about that and how it's like, oh, that was what, but her worth was tied to maybe a little bit how she looked. And so she would get validation and recognition going out in the world. She was a stay-at-home mom. So that kind of always made her feel good, lit her up a little bit. And now that her body is changing and whatnot, I remember just very clearly her talking about feeling invisible and then knowing that and feeling that with my grandparents and feeling as they older, it's like it's the sense of like pushing aside or devaluing, and maybe it's not intentional. And I think we don't do a good enough job as families here, and at least in the United States, of really honoring our elderly, honoring them and period. Never mind if they're ill and it becomes this um, burden, or becomes this thing that we need to deal with. And, all these homes, we have so many nursing homes, we have so many older care, places of care. Um, and I'm just, you said it perfectly. And I'm to watch these individuals light up like that again and to have that be seen by their family. I mean, that alone, what an incredible moment for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's another I think there's another reason, like a systemic reason as to why our society sometimes doesn't um like is able to tap into the wisdom and the worth of older people. Um and that's some of the work that I'm also doing with an organization called Cogenerate, where I'm innovation director. And part of the the patterns that we're seeing in our society is that like we are age siloed. So there was a time when our homes and our neighborhoods were more integrated and they were multi-generational, and
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
then we
Yes.
create an efficiency problem by putting people in schools, factories and pipelines. And somehow we like very quietly became very age segregated in these like systemic spaces. So you go to school, you go to
Interesting.
college, you have your kids, you
Mm.
graduate, and then you retire, which is no longer really the trajectory, but we're still living in that system. And so if all after you retire, you're completely just taken out of society, you don't have opportunities, at least organic opportunities, to really be able to showcase and kind of reintegrate and be part of our, of our society in general. So
And
there's
so much wisdom and experience to be learned from, right? Like,
yeah. So there is a greater um issue at play as well. And so thinking intentionally about like what are spaces where we can make it easier for people to use their talents and to have purpose, right? Is something that
absolutely. So well said. And it sounds like even just the people that are, I love that you're almost giving that purpose back to, this particular community that you're working with. It really makes it just warms my heart, and it makes me really grateful to know that people are paying attention like that. So where do we go next with Mind and Melody? It sounds like I know this. Did this come from also you working with children at some point too? Was that
so I started just with the idea of like, what if I do this in a hospital where I was seeing
yeah,
kids my
right.
age? But the
The
first
kids. Yeah.
Yes, but we started with people that were living with dementia and Alzheimer's, and now we've actually expanded to working with children and other adults with different types of disabilities like autism as well.
Amazing. I was gonna ask about that. Yeah. So how is that going? And is this mostly just happening in Florida, right? Or is it in New York or
Yeah, so we work with over 2,000 people every year, probably in around like 70 or 80 combination of long-term care facilities, day centers, summer camps, like literally anywhere where we have a space, and where we can find a
amazing,
community. And we have programs in Florida, so in Miami, all the way to the Treasure Coast, and then in Tallahassee, as well as New York, and a couple in New Mexico.
right? And that's where you're based out of, right? No,
Yes,
in New
I
Mexico.
am. I am in Los Alamos, New Mexico, although my heart
Oh.
is always in Miami.
Yeah, sorry, that's her.
That's where my family is. That's where I grew up. That's where, all of these incredible things happened. So it's so
That's
funny how
that's
like,
beautiful.
yeah,
How you
I'm always
life
like,
takes you.
where am I really from? Because I was born in Venezuela. I live there. So when I've been back, they're like, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? Then I go to Miami. They're like, well, where are you from? And you're like,
You don't have an accent.
I'm like, oh, you're from Miami. I'm like, okay, I don't know where I'm from. I'm from all these places.
That's amazing. So, do you have intentions of it being national, with your organization, and being able to reach different, out like, countrywide, or what are your intentions, and what are the next steps here with
Yeah, with
Mind and
my
Melody?
vision. Yeah, totally. And
Yes.
I would love for Mind and Melody to be all over the country, especially for we do a lot of work with people from different cultures. So not just things in English or Spanish or, so we've worked with Holocaust survivors, which has been, I mean, there are many, like there's few left, but that's just been an incredible experience. So being able to expand to, different populations is fascinating. And I think, yeah, this is
Yeah.
something that needs to be offered as medicine, right? As every like you go to the
Oh, I
doctor,
couldn't
you're
agree
able to
more.
prescribe this medication. So I would love to see that in the future. And then another kind of idea that I'm very excited about is um I would love to see a long-term care facility that's 50% staffed by creatives, meaning like actors and musicians and dancers, because I think one of the most challenging symptoms of dementia is just managing the behaviors. And the
Mm.
medications we're using right now for managing the behaviors are kind of like very limited, and they're kind of used for mostly all types of psychiatric um
Mm. And you
conditions.
mean behaviors as in like, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, it could
Mhm.
be like hallucinations, or it could be
Mm.
depression, or
Mm.
anxiety or mood changes. And those are the types of behaviors that make the conditions really hard to manage because,
Yeah.
um, if you're trying to get somebody to do a certain action, like eat their breakfast or like get out of bed and do their daily activities, if you're getting
Yeah.
fought with this resistance, um, which could be due to some of those behavioral and cognitive issues, it makes the care really difficult. And I think the best way to combat that is through humor. And what better person to do humor than like stand-up comedians and improv, and also music helps kind of redirect people and change that. And so I think like if we teamed up these artists with like the care staff that's actually trained to deal with those daily activities, it could probably help with a lot of the caregiver burden, which we see like long-term care facilities have. I mean, I could tell you how many times these places have been acquired in a year by different
Yeah.
companies, and also how high the turnover is of just staff because it's such a
Yeah,
difficult.
I can imagine.
And I
It
think
is.
part of the challenge here comes back to this like this conversation we're having around worth, which is that when
Mhm.
people fail to see people's worth, especially like in these long-term care facilities, then it changes how you interact with them, what you think they can and can't, and then that
Mhm.
affects the care that they get. And so I do think the arts play a really, really big, important role in helping shift how people see other people's worth. And it can really change like healthcare outcomes. This is my hypothesis. But of course,
Go for
we
it. Land it.
pilot. Yeah, we'd have to pilot and try it. But this is one of these ideas where I'm like, huh, it's still poking at me. So we'll see where it goes.
Oh my God, I love it. And anything we can do to support that too. It's like that's incredible. And I agree. It- So I would assume for you guys to keep going, obviously you depend on funding, correct? Right? And so are people being are is your funding like, when you're going out or fundraising or whatever, people really starting to see talk about value, the value of this? Is it hard? Has it been a challenging thing for you guys to get funding, or do you feel like it's picking up? Because I feel like there's so many programs about children, right? And you're just talking about like, do you find there now like this vision of like, well, I have a view about who they are and how they are. And like you said, maybe I'm not valuing them enough, so I'm gonna go over here and spend my money. Like, does that affect your donors? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know the statistic right now, but there is definitely a lot of the money that goes to older adults is like significantly less than the money that is invested in youth. And part of that is because how we perceive like the worth of youth, right? Like nobody questions Like I think of my own son. This might be a controversial like point that I'm going to bring up, but it's like nobody's questioning his worth. He's not productive. What is he productive in? You know? But nobody's like so there's something there.
Yeah.
That's
No,
just like
so true.
I don't know, right? But because we place so much emphasis, oh, they're the future or they're whatever, which I'm not saying is not true, but also there's so much untapped potential in older generations. We just have to change our perspective of how we do it. I'm gonna give you like a quick example. There's a
Yeah.
restaurant in Japan that has a cafe, I guess, that's ran by people that have dementia and Alzheimer's. And
I think I
you
just read about that actually.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's fascinating because you're spinning the entire idea like perspective of like what is a restaurant and what is the experience and like people nowadays, especially with our saturated um virtual world, want these
Mhm.
like unique experiences. And like what is more unique than going to a restaurant where you really probably don't know what you're gonna get or what they're gonna say to you that might just be hilarious or funny. And like you can
Mm.
design spaces and experiences by focusing on people's like assets and strengths rather than focusing on their weakness. So I do think like part of that is that we still as a society haven't like changed our mindset of what is truly possible when we get to that stage in life or if we consider a disability or a condition. Um and so that still affects the funding world
Mhm.
and how many dollars are available to really
Mhm.
innovate. Yeah.
I would imagine. But look, you are so incredible, and it sounds like you are committed to this. I feel so happy that you're out there, bringing this to the world, and I have great hopes for it. What is your definition of self-worth after what you've kind of experienced yourself and seen, and now and how we perceive it? How do you define
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like my definition will
it?
probably change over time, but for now,
Everybody says that actually.
right? Right.
Yeah.
I think right now it's like it's the ability to believe in myself and also the ability to believe in others. Because like I've mentioned, if we can't do those two things, then if they're both interrelated. You can't just believe in yourself and not believe in the potential of others.
Mm.
So I think that's
Yeah.
where it stands for me.
I really love that. I really love that. That's a unique answer to this podcast, and it's really cool. It just shows you, what your destiny and purpose is, in my opinion, is really that connection to others. What do you want the people you work with in these beautiful places that you bring music to? What do you want them to know?
Hmm. I want them to know that they're loved, that we care about them, that we are fighting for them, and that we will continue to show up for them when others don't.
I love that. And Christina, what do you consider your superpower to be if you had to choose one?
Hmm. Relentless. I will not give up if I really want it. It's just no
I
matter
feel
what.
like in this hour of talking to you, that makes perfect sense. I want to thank you so much for the work you're doing, for coming unworthy and sharing with our listeners. I can imagine people listening may want to participate, may want to donate, may have somebody in their lives that could use support and help, like what your organization is doing. So, how do they find you? Can you let us know?
Yeah, thank you so much for lifting that up. So they can message us at on our website at mindandmelody.org, and there's many different ways that you can get involved. Either through donating or if you know there's a musician out there that would really benefit from this work because we didn't get to talk too much about
Yeah,
that side of it on here, but it really
yeah.
changes people that are doing the work just as much as the people that we're that we're going
Yeah,
through
you
today.
feel free to elaborate. You can talk about it right now. So how are you finding that with the musicians? Like, and how are you finding the musicians, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, we find musicians through Facebook, through different music groups, churches, like literally any colleges, anywhere. And it's more important to be the empathy and the charisma is more important than the actual musicianship. I mean, it does matter,
Mm.
but we can work around with tracks and
Mm.
other things. But really, it's the energy and the compassion that they bring. And I think what I have seen and then what I've heard a lot from musicians is like they'll normally maybe go play at a gig at a bar, right? Where people they're just background music, and here they can like use their art and their music in a way that they have never seen before and to really change someone's lives. And that is just as impactful as it is for the people receiving
Absolutely.
the music as well, they're making it together because it's not like we just
Yeah.
play the interactive experience.
Yeah.
But that's what we've heard. And I we have this trend where there's also a lot of like health students that are interested in this work. So we've had like tons of people that end up going to medical school or they become music therapists or um whatever they do in their career, like they've mentioned, like this experience has been one of the most significant experiences in my life. And it
Mm.
changed the perspective of how, even walking to the grocery store there, like I saw somebody who was like older today and I like changed my approach on how I interacted with them versus just being frustrated around like, oh, they're moving too slow or they're in my way or whatever. And so it really is changing that experience for them as well.
Wow. And you're giving them this purpose as well too. It's incredible.
Yeah, so
That's incredible.
people can can sign up to be a musician or to volunteer, or if they maybe there's somebody in your network that that's like,
Yeah.
hey, we have because that's one of the things that opening doors is sometimes even more valuable than money, right?
Mhm.
So if you know an owner of
I
an
agree.
living facility or a contact at a school or like just think about who you may know that might be interested in this work and we'd love to have a conversation.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And we're gonna put all of this in the show notes. So you
Great.
mentioned your website. Where do you guys have a social media accounts? You want to
We
shout out
do.
there while we're here? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, let me check. I am so bad. I think it's
Oh, it's okay. And again, we will write everything down in the show notes for people to easily access. Yeah.
great.
Don't worry about it.
All
Yeah.
right. Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time and congratulations on baby number 2. I am thrilled for you.
Me too. Me too. We're almost there.
Yep. Good luck in this last push, so to speak.
No, it was such a
Well, we're gonna keep an eye on you guys. Yeah, and I want to know more about what you're doing, how you're doing, and please, can we connect when you're in Miami?
Yes, absolutely. And if you're ever out here in New Mexico, it is a underrated, enchanting place.
It
Highly
is. I've
recommend.
actually been to Santa Fe. Yeah, I used to have been to Santa Fe and Albuquerque. Yeah, when I was younger. It's just incredibly spiritual, beautiful.
It is. It is. That's one of my favorite things about living here is just there's a different energy and also the sky is the bluest skies that I've ever seen.
Mm.
And I just live in a beautiful place where there's a mesa and I can just see like there's hiking trails and the vast like just horizon, which is my favorite. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about Miami too is the ocean and that kind of vastness that we get.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a more upbeat energy,
Yeah, totally.
which is also needed and super cool. But I do really love where I am now.
Oh, it's really beautiful. I hear you. Well, yep. Well, again, when you're in Miami, let's connect. And I'm just super, super grateful that you came on and to get to know you has been a pleasure. And thank you everybody for listening and watching. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Worthy the Podcast. Our goal is to build a community, and we do that through people like you who listen, subscribe, and most importantly, share with someone you care about. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, as well as our YouTube channel. And if this episode resonated with you, leave a review. We want to hear from you. Thanks for being here, and remember, you've always been enough. Period. This podcast is meant to inspire and educate, but I am not a licensed therapist or medical professional. Everything shared here is based on personal experience and perspective, so take what resonates and leave the rest.